The Vietnam War. 1969. The 101st Airborne Division returns to the A Shau Valley. The A Shau Valley was one of the most heavily contested regions of the Vietnam War, a long and narrow corridor that served as a primary supply route for North Vietnamese forces. For years, it remained a central hub for troop movements, logistics, and fortified base areas. When the 101st Airborne Division returned to the valley, their objective was to disrupt this network and apply direct pressure on some of the enemy's most entrenched positions. This operation proved to be one of the U.S. Army's most challenging campaigns in the northern provinces. The valley's geography dictated the tempo of operations. With steep ridgelines, limited access points, and dense vegetation, movement was often slow and tactically demanding. Infantry units advanced through dense jungle and steep slopes, establishing positions on the high ground overlooking the valley floor, using these vantage points to monitor enemy routes and support broader divisional operations. Historical records show that North Vietnamese forces used the A Shau as a protected corridor, reinforced by years of construction and logistical effort. Bunkers, trench lines, and hidden supply caches were scattered throughout the hillsides. The 101st encountered these defensive systems repeatedly, often finding positions recently abandoned as enemy troops withdrew deeper into the valley or across the border into Laos. This pattern reflected the North Vietnamese strategy: engage only when advantageous, withdraw before sustaining heavy losses, and preserve manpower for future operations. Helicopter support played a critical role throughout the campaign. Aircraft delivered ammunition, rations, medical supplies, and engineering tools to small landing zones cut into the ridges. These resupply missions were essential in sustaining the infantry units operating far from established bases. Soldiers worked quickly to unload supplies before lifting away from terrain that offered little margin for error. Medevac missions followed the same pattern, with helicopters extracting casualties whenever landing zones could be secured. The environment posed many challenges. Engineers assisted infantry units in clearing vegetation, improving trails, and expanding temporary positions. The steep slopes and limited visibility demanded constant adjustment in planning and execution. Operations in the valley were defined as much by the terrain as by enemy resistance. Units sometimes advanced only a short distance in a full day's movement due to the difficulty of the landscape. As the 101st pushed deeper into the valley, they continued to encounter evidence of North Vietnamese activity. Abandoned campsites, ammunition packaging, and communication wire were found along the trails. Reconnaissance flights confirmed that large enemy formations were active throughout the region, moving between fortified positions and logistical hubs. These findings reinforced the valley's importance as a strategic supply artery for the North Vietnamese war effort.
Go, 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 shoot, shoot!
Contact with enemy forces varied in intensity. These engagements were often short, with the enemy withdrawing before sustained combat could occur. When casualties were sustained, medical personnel provided treatment before coordinating evacuation through the nearest suitable landing zones. Throughout the operation, the 101st Airborne Division maintained disciplined movement and coordination. multiple units advanced along parallel ridge lines, supported by artillery and air assets positioned to respond to enemy activity across the valley. This approach allowed American forces to pressure North Vietnamese units from different directions, disrupting their ability to move freely or maintain consistent supply routes. The broader results of the operation are reflected in captured documents, destroyed bunkers, and intelligence gathered from the abandoned positions. American forces succeeded in disrupting logistical activity, clearing key areas, and gathering information on enemy troop movements. Although the terrain prevented permanent occupation, each sweep forced North Vietnamese units to relocate and rebuild their positions. This process strained their logistical network and reduced their ability to coordinate operations in the surrounding provinces. Historical records of operations in the A Shau Valley show the cost of conducting repeated sweeps through this terrain. During the 1969 campaign, American units operating in and around the valley sustained notable personnel and equipment losses. Elements of the 101st Airborne Division reported more than 100 killed in action over the course of the broader operation, with several hundred additional soldiers wounded as a result of small arms ambushes, mortar fire, booby traps, and close-range engagements along the ridgelines. Aircraft losses were also significant. The combination of steep terrain, limited landing zones, and enemy anti-aircraft positions resulted in numerous helicopters damaged or destroyed during resupply, medevac, and troop insertion missions. Several aircraft were forced down by ground fire or mechanical failure brought on by the operating conditions. These losses reflected the risk inherent in sustaining infantry units deep inside the valley's restricted geography. Enemy casualties were difficult to confirm due to rapid withdrawal and the concealment provided by the terrain. However, after-action reports document several hundred North Vietnamese soldiers killed or incapacitated during the campaign, along with the destruction of extensive bunker systems, ammunition stockpiles, and logistical caches. Recovered documents and equipment indicated the presence of well-organized enemy formations using the valley as a major transit point for operations further east. The material cost of the operation included destroyed bunkers, captured weapons, damaged communication gear, and the loss of multiple helicopters and support assets. These figures illustrate the scale of effort required to challenge the North Vietnamese presence in the region. The valley's geography amplified every risk, and the opposition encountered there was among the most entrenched and experienced American units faced during the war. This statistical record helps define the operational reality of the campaign. The effort to disrupt the enemy's logistical structure carried a measurable cost in personnel, aircraft, and equipment. Yet the disruption to enemy routes, the destruction of fortified positions, and the intelligence gathered during the operation contributed to the larger objective of limiting North Vietnamese mobility along the border and reducing their operational reach into the northern provinces. In the long view of the conflict, operations in the A Shau Valley demonstrated the difficulty of conducting large-scale missions in restrictive terrain against an enemy familiar with every aspect of the environment. The 101st Airborne Division's return to the valley formed part of a sustained effort to apply pressure on critical enemy infrastructure. While the North Vietnamese often reoccupied the valley after American forces withdrew, the repeated disruption of their logistics imposed significant operational challenges and shaped the broader campaign in the northern regions of South Vietnam. The 101st Airborne's actions in the A Shau Valley remain a significant chapter in the division's history and an example of the tactical challenges faced by American military forces throughout the conflict. Thank you for joining us tonight.